After 15 years of helping couples navigate the treacherous waters of infidelity, I never imagined I'd find myself drowning in those same waters. As a marriage counselor, I'd heard countless stories of betrayal, guided hundreds of couples through their darkest moments, and prided myself on maintaining professional boundaries. Then one text message shattered both my personal and professional worlds, forcing me to question everything I thought I knew about trust, ethics, and healing. The morning it all unraveled started normally enough. I was reviewing my client notes before my first session, preparing to meet with Rebecca Marshall, a woman who'd been seeing me for 6 months to work through trust issues in her marriage. Her case had always touched me deeply, perhaps because she reminded me of myself at a younger age, or perhaps because of her raw honesty about her struggles to maintain hope in her relationship. My husband Michael's text came just as I was gathering my materials for Rebecca's session. Left my phone at home. Can you bring it to my office? Simple enough, except Michael worked from home 3 days a week, and this was supposed to be one of those days. Still, I didn't think much of it as I retrieved his phone from our bedroom nightstand. The notification that changed everything flashed across his screen as I picked it up. A message from Rebecca Marshall. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. My professional training kicked in immediately, attempting to rationalize, to find alternative explanations, to avoid jumping to conclusions. But as I stood there, my hands trembling, more messages appeared, leaving no room for doubt. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. For months, I'd been counseling Rebecca about her fears of abandonment, her struggle to trust after previous betrayals, all while my own husband was secretly reinforcing every fear she'd ever expressed. The professional boundaries I'd maintained so carefully had been violated in the most intimate way possible. My immediate reaction was to cancel all my appointments for the day, but years of training reminded me that my other clients shouldn't suffer for my personal crisis. So I did what therapists do. I compartmentalized. I moved through my morning sessions on autopilot, nodding and responding while my mind raced with questions about how long this had been going on, how they'd met, how I'd missed the signs. The ethical implications were staggering. As a licensed therapist, I was bound by strict confidentiality agreements and professional standards. Rebecca had shared her deepest fears and vulnerabilities with me, trusting in the sanctity of our therapeutic relationship. My husband's actions hadn't just betrayed our marriage, they'd compromised my professional integrity and potentially put my license at risk. That evening, I confronted Michael. He broke down immediately, confessing that they'd met by chance at a coffee shop near my office 3 months ago. The affair had started shortly after, their shared knowledge of me creating an intimate connection that quickly turned physical. She understood me in a way no one else has, he said, not realizing how deeply those words cut, given that understanding others was literally my profession. The following days were a blur of ethical consultations and emergency appointments with my own therapist. My supervisor advised me to terminate Rebecca's therapy immediately, citing the irreparable breach of professional boundaries, but doing so without explanation would leave her vulnerable, potentially reinforcing her trust issues, the very issues that had brought her to therapy in the first place. I thought about all the times I'd sat across from couples dealing with infidelity, offering wisdom about transparency and healing. Now those same words felt hollow in my mouth. How could I continue counseling others through betrayal when I could barely process my own? The professional detachment I'd cultivated over years of practice crumbled in the face of personal devastation. The situation became even more complicated when I discovered that Rebecca had no idea I was Michael's wife. He'd given her a false last name, claiming to be divorced. This revelation added another layer of betrayal, not just to me, but to her as well. She was now not only a client whose trust had been violated, but also an unwitting participant in the destruction of her therapist's marriage. I spent sleepless nights reviewing our sessions, analyzing every word Rebecca had shared about her new relationship, looking for signs I should have noticed. Had I been too close to see the obvious? Or had my professional training created blind spots in my personal life? The boundaries between therapist and betrayed wife became increasingly blurred. The decision about how to handle the situation professionally tormented me. My ethical obligations as a therapist required me to consider Rebecca's well-being, even as my personal pain screamed for distance and severance. After consulting with multiple colleagues and ethics boards, I crafted a careful plan for transitioning Rebecca to another therapist, one that would protect both her therapeutic progress and my professional integrity. The final session with Rebecca was the hardest hour of my professional life. I maintained my composure as I explained that I needed to transfer her care due to an ethical conflict that had arisen. Her eyes filled with tears, fear of abandonment written across her face. The urge to tell her everything, to share our common betrayal, was almost overwhelming. But I knew that doing so would only cause more harm, turning her therapeutic journey into another trauma. Michael moved out the next day, leaving behind a letter expressing remorse and confusion. He wrote about feeling overshadowed by my professional success, about seeking validation in the worst possible way. As a therapist, I could analyze his motivations clinically. The classic midlife crisis, the attraction to forbidden fruit, the self-destructive impulse to sabotage stability. As a wife, I could barely look at his handwriting without feeling physically ill. The professional fallout was significant but manageable. I took a leave of absence from my practice, referring my clients to trusted colleagues. The therapy community rallied around me, offering support and understanding. Many shared similar stories of personal crises intersecting with professional obligations. It helped to know I wasn't alone, though the unique nature of my situation, having my husband affair with a client, remained particularly painful. Months passed, and I slowly rebuilt my practice, now specializing in helping other therapists and healthcare professionals navigate personal crises. My experience, though devastating, had given me a unique perspective on the challenges of maintaining professional ethics while processing personal trauma. I developed new protocols for protecting both client and therapist boundaries, sharing my insights at professional conferences and in journal articles. Through my own therapy, I began to understand that being a therapist hadn't protected me from betrayal, just as being a doctor doesn't make one immune to illness. My professional knowledge had perhaps made the pain more acute. I understood too well the psychological implications of every aspect of the betrayal, but it also gave me tools for healing that many others don't have access to. A year later, I received an email from Rebecca. She'd discovered the truth about Michael's identity and our connection. Her words were kind, expressing sorrow for her unwitting role in my pain and gratitude for my professional handling of the situation. She'd continued therapy with another counselor and was working through the complex emotions of being both betrayer and betrayed. Her healing journey paralleled my own in many ways. The experience transformed my approach to therapy. I became more attuned to the delicate balance between professional boundaries and human connection. My clients often comment on my deepened empathy, though they don't know its source. I've learned that being wounded doesn't make me a less effective healer. In many ways, it's made me a better one. Today, I maintain stricter boundaries between my personal and professional lives, while acknowledging that they can never be completely separate. I'm more careful about sharing personal details with clients, more vigilant about protecting the therapeutic space, but I'm also more authentic in my recognition that we're all vulnerable to life's painful surprises, regardless of our professional expertise. The crisis that nearly ended my career ultimately transformed it. I still help couples navigate infidelity, but now, with the hard-earned wisdom of personal experience, I understand both the clinical and emotional aspects of betrayal in a way that no amount of training could have taught me. It's not a perspective I would have chosen to gain, but it's one that has made me a more effective therapist and a stronger person. Michael and I finalized our divorce 6 months ago. In our last conversation, he asked if my professional training had helped me cope with our situation. I told him the truth, that all the therapeutic knowledge in the world couldn't ease the personal pain of betrayal, but it could provide a framework for understanding and eventually healing from it. Sometimes the best lessons come from living through what we thought we understood.